Tonight on the Art House Drive-In Picture Show.
Tonight, it's a short reel episode where we bid bon voyage to Ryan as he takes off for a little while. We talk about the changes coming to your 9th favorite film podcast, and we take a look at Steven Soderbergh's new film, Kimi.
I'm here.
Kimi, damn it. Stop, Kimi, go off.
And now, here are your projectionists, Charles Wood and Aaron Woodsworth.
Welcome to the short reel. Later on, we will talk about Steven Soderbergh's new movie, Kimi, but first, we need to talk about the future of this show. You've heard quite a few of these short reel episodes recently, and there's a myriad of reasons for that. The holidays were harder on me than I expected. Like, even the Zoom family call can drain me beyond all reason. So it took me a while to recover. Like, in fact, I'm still not really back to normal just yet. But to be completely honest with you, Ryan and I talked over whether to call it quits on the show even before the holidays. I mean, we still loved some aspects of it, but it felt like it was getting harder and harder and harder to do at a time when it theoretically should have been getting a bit easier. Time was an issue, illness was an issue, and those issues made the fun parts of doing this show, well, less fun. And then life slapped us in the face a little. And the tall and short of it is that Ryan is going away for a long while to take care of some personal stuff. He's not ill or anything, aside from being incurably ugly. Oh, shit. I thought I deleted that in the second draft. He just found that there were some things he needs to take care of at home that were obviously more important than this podcast. I mean, we love all 12 of you listeners, every last one of you, especially you, Poland. But priorities are priorities. So please send Ryan all the good vibes, prayers, energy hugs, or dick pic. Wait, what's that still doing in there? Look, just send the man your best as he heads on down the trail, will you? We love you, Rhino, and we'll be here when you return. Of course, that means that if the show is going to continue, I need a new co-host because, fuck, man, I've seen the download numbers. My solo episodes do not do well. It's fucking brutal. And that is where Aaron Woodsworth is stepping up to the plate with the wiffle ball bat, because we have long known that giving him a real baseball bat leads to death and destruction. Aaron, how are you, sir?
I am good. I am post-holidays. I think I'm as close to normal as it's just going to get. So yeah. I'm just at operating level. But yeah, no, I hope that everything goes well with Ryan. I miss him. I'm just keeping the seat warm, but it's nice to be here.
Yeah. I mean, people who have listened to the show for any amount of time know who you are and know what you bring to the table. I mean, I assume you're sitting at a table, but I can't
roughly.
Yeah.
It's like an ottoman table thing. So,
yeah. So you're in the manager's office here at the drive-in. I get it. Yeah, it's cool. Yeah. Walk right in, take over. That's great. So
Ryan's office was still locked, so I decided to come in here.
Yeah, there's a weird stench coming from that office too. I don't think we should go in there for a while until we call the authorities.
Probably best.
So, along with Aaron stepping up, there are going to be some changes here on the podcast. We're going to have a little bit of a new direction. I mean, if you noticed this week when you downloaded the episode, the artwork was still the same, but the name on the show has changed. The name is going to be the Art House Drive-In Picture Show going forward. And the reason for that is, while we are keeping the Night at the Drive-In format in our monthly double feature, we're going to be covering one cult/drive-in movie and one art house repertory theater type movie in each double feature. And the movies will be connected to one another in some fashion. It might be subject matter or a theme or an actor, director, writer. Somehow they'll be connected. So that's going to be the main change. I think that it was a change that just reflects our own tastes a little bit more. And so we're going to be doing that. That's probably the biggest change. The other change is you'll see social media changes. The artwork will change. We may not be continuing on Facebook just because we're going to focus on other platforms, but we'll let you know either way once we decide if that really matters to you. But the social media handles, email address will be changing to reflect the title change. We are hopefully going to add more episodes to the free feed. So we could be in your ears like once a week rather than once a month. Probably still like a double feature every month. And then the non-double feature weeks will have something else. Might take us a while to get this going, to figure out what sorts of episodes will be included and try to get a format set up. But we're going to try to give you more bang for your invisible buck. And as far as bucks go, Patreon and merch, we will have a Patreon page and a merch store coming along fairly soon. We had a little bit of a fiasco with TeePublic late last year. And I was going to say I don't want to badmouth anybody, but fuck it. They took our money and wasn't a lot of money, but it would have covered our expenses for a month. And they really just kind of gave me the runaround. So I felt like Angela from Kimi kind of dealing with them, except that they didn't send Hitman after me.
That you know of.
That I know of, right. Well, I don't go anywhere. So yeah, they could have been sent out in front of the house, I guess. But And we want to figure out exactly, like realistically, how much we can create so that we're offering something of value for the Patreon subscriptions. Because really, it's just that we've been operating in the red for the entire run of the podcast. And so we were hoping to at least break even on the show. So I think that's it, right? I think that's the stuff that's going to change.
Yeah, I think so.
All right, let's get into Steven Soderbergh and David Koepp's Kimi. Attention patrons. The movies discussed on this podcast will be spoiled from start to finish. If you wish to experience these cinematic gems visually, please do so before continuing with this episode. We will be right here when you return. Thank you and have a pleasant evening.
And now, please enjoy our featured presentation.
How many devices do you have around you right now? You realize that they're watching you and listening to you, don't you? And they know who you really are. This is Kimi.
Kimi?
I'm here.
What time is it?
It's 7:26 a.m.
Kimi?
I'm here.
Call Dr. Burns.
I got her.
What do you want from me?
Kimi?
I'm here.
Why don't you run from me?
Call Darius.
Hey, hotness!
Wow.
What are you wondering? What do you know?
Kimi?
I'm here.
Reopen last stream on desktop.
I need more kitchen paper.
Open yesterday's stream. I'm a voice stream interpreter. I may have heard a crime on one of the streams.
The devices pick up lots of things.
Just
mark this degraded audio and delete it.
I am not capable, and you know it. I think a woman might need help. How do I find out who she is?
You need a device number and the admin code.
Will you make me one?
This is last favor, Katniss.
Close your files, come to my office. We'll listen to the recordings together. Miss Childs, I have to know what we're dealing with.
We're dealing with what sounds like a premeditated murder.
How do I know that?
Because I just told you. Twice now.
Maybe you've just replaced your real stresses with this.
Can we please call the FBI?
I understand that you have taken some mental health leave in the past.
Why is that in my file?
What do you want from me? Why don't you run?
You said you had her. They did. But now they don't.
Kimmy, bedtime lights.
Is this the only copy?
I emailed it to everyone I know this morning.
Kimmy!
I'm here.
I need some kitchen paper.
I was just about to say the real star of that trailer and those recorded segments she goes over. It's just the kitchen paper.
The kitchen paper.
It took me a minute. I'm like, I don't know what she's talking about. Then I'm like, oh, okay. These paper towels, I guess I'm just going to call them kitchen paper from now on because why not?
I at first I was like, oh, she needs a notepad. Because my one side of my family is from the South. They're hill people, you know. So
nice.
But I had never heard that term before. Kitchen paper.
Yeah.
It never came up. I thought they needed a pad, and I was like, you're literally talking to a smart device lady.
Right.
You know?
Right. It took me a minute because I do not have family from the South. I have family that has moved to the South.
Yeah.
We're all city folk and Norwegians. And like, it was, so
I can't.
The accent was awesome.
She was great. Ooh. She was great. I love that accent. I might start calling it kitchen paper from now on.
I mean, it seems like a waste not to.
Yeah. Right.
It's what Steven Soderbergh would want.
Yeah. It's one of the few things I learned from the screenplay. So the basic setup for our kind of new format of discussion is that we'll read the synopsis and just a short synopsis and then have a long discussion of the film. And so I'm going to get into the synopsis right now. An agoraphobic named Angela Childs, played by Zoe Kravitz, works remotely for an Amazon Facebook hybrid type company called Amygdala Corporation that produces a very Alexa-esque device it is dubbed Kimi. Angela's job is to listen to customer commands that stump Kimi and update the device's programming to reconcile those miscommunications. However, when Angela comes across recordings of the rape and subsequent contract killing of Samantha Garrity, played by Erica Christensen, she has to confront her trauma-induced mental illness to report the perpetrators and bring them to justice. But there are two problems with Angela's plan. The rapist and the man who hired the hitmen to kill Samantha is a man named Bradley Haisling, played by Derek Delgaudio, who is also the CEO of the Amygdala Corporation. And he's being softly blackmailed / helped by a corporate fixer named Antonio Rios, played by Jaime Camil, just a week before Amygdala goes public. What follows is a tech-infused chase on the streets of Seattle as Angela tries to make it back to the relative safety of her heavily wired apartment cocoon. Can she escape a hit? Can she find the love that her condition has thus far prevented her from attaining? Will there be an Elastica hacker anthem over the final scene? Stick around to find out. So, what did you expect going into this? Because I sent you the notes that I have for this episode, and they're pretty much just scene-by-scene stuff.
Yeah.
But just to open the discussion up, what did you expect going into the movie. I mean, one shallow thing I expected was that Zoe Kravitz's name would be Kimi, but then I was kind of like, well, no, wait, it's the Alexa device. Don't be an idiot, but I still want to call her Kimi so badly. What did you expect going into this movie, though?
I thought that it's one of those things where when I saw the trailer for it, I was like, oh, this is the kind of movie that it is. And then once again, I'm like sort of blindsided by this is Steven Soderbergh.
Yeah.
For some reason, that happens to me a few times where I'm like, oh, look. And then I'm like, wait, this is him. And so I thought that it was going to be like his way to play with like Elizabeth Salander character from The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. And
right.
I mean, it's one of those things where I guess I expect more movies like this that seem directly to be dealing with COVID and using it as a story point. But I also, from that trailer, I can just start naming off stuff this reminds me of already.
Right.
Nothing about it was like, oh, this is super unique. I'm like, this is arguably Hitchcock meets Dragon Tattoo meets Steven Soderbergh. Like, okay.
Yeah.
I knew I would watch it. I knew, I'm going to watch this.
Right. Right.
So
I'm with you. I mean, when I first saw it, I thought of The Conversation.
Yeah, which you brought up, which I didn't, and I'm a little sad, especially after seeing the movie. I'm a little sad that I didn't.
Right. Well, yeah, and actually, when you dig into, like, when you actually see the movie, there are more direct comparisons to The Conversation. Like when she cleans up the audio clip that she has, which is of Samantha's assault, that felt so much like The Conversation.
Yeah.
And then I also thought of Rear Window, but that was based mostly on the trailer. Like once you get into the actual film, it does have some Rear Window aspects to it in that, you have Angela looking at people through the window, like Terry, the DA who lives across the street, who she has a hookup type relationship with.
Yeah.
And then you have Kevin, who we meet near the end of the movie by name, who's another guy who doesn't go out that much and who is watching Angela, and he's kind of like this red herring type character where you think he's going to be villainous and it turns out to be the exact opposite.
What I liked is that initially when you see him, that actor Devin Rattray, I like that guy, and I was like, he's kind of too big of a name to only be a face in the window the entire time.
Right.
So I was like, at some point, this guy's got like good screen presence for me. So I'm like, at some point, this guy's going to be kind of part of it. And then really only at the end.
Yeah. Yeah. This movie is kind of like one of those films where I like the movie, right?
Yeah.
Second time I watched it, I liked it less.
Yeah.
I think part of it is because the script is just clockwork.
Yeah.
Where everything that's set up is paid off in some way, even little tiny things. There are all these little Chekhov's guns planted around her apartment, basically, that all go off in the final scene. And I agree with you that, like, I think the COVID angle of the movie was interesting because it uses COVID as kind of a story point, but it doesn't, COVID's not the central issue, really.
Right.
I mean, COVID's just kind of irritated her OCD and her agoraphobia.
Yeah.
But I did like that it was kind of like, okay, COVID does exist.
Yeah.
But it's not like this central issue that everybody's kind of, nobody like tells her, take off your fucking mask or whatever. You know what I mean? It's nothing like that.
No, it's easy to see that as a thing that happened exacerbated conditions that she has. The one thing I did want to point out that we see like right off a couple times, it's like very focused on camera-wise, the keys that she has.
Yeah.
Her keychain is a puzzle piece, which is a symbol for autism awareness. So,
oh, interesting.
The second I saw that, I was like, okay, this is even more of an Elizabeth Salander thing, because this is also something that this character is dealing with. And her trouble with the sort of human emotion stuff with this guy, Terry,
Right.
her, or maybe just trouble with relationships or understanding like some of the things. I absolutely believe that's meant to tell us that she is also autistic.
That's a great point. Like, I saw the puzzle piece and I thought to myself, well, that's got to mean something. And if you watch the entire film, it's kind of like, well, that could be a really shallow indication. But I think what you're saying makes a lot more sense.
For me, I just know because like when I lived in Indiana, you know, you get those license plates that support something, and mine was like supported the blood center or whatever. And there wasn't one here in Washington. So I was just like, well, the one that I was looking at was this autism awareness one. And it's a puzzle piece picture. So when I saw that, I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I thought it was an actually interesting way to kind of say some stuff about her character without saying it.
That really kind of opens up a lot of things, because I think the thing that's fascinating about the movie is the fact that if she is on the spectrum, then it does explain basically her persistence in things.
Yeah. Her inability to like not complete that entire list.
Exactly. Exactly. So. Right. And that's perfect. Yeah. Not to complete the list, or like her, when she goes in to see Natalie, played by Rita Wilson, who's fantastic. And we can talk about her later because she's really great. But when she goes in to talk to Natalie about the audio clip, and Natalie is her boss, and Angela's insistence on Natalie keeping to what she said in the phone call, like when Angela originally reports what she's heard on these recordings, the first guy that she talks to is like just a corporate drone, and he's in his house too. And he's basically yelling at her saying, just forget about it, sweep it under the rug. We don't want a big whole Amazon Iowa thing or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And then she says something. Then she gets him to basically tell her who would have information about where this recording came from. And he points her towards Natalie Chowdhury, I think is her name.
Yeah.
And Rita Wilson's character. And so when she calls, this corporate drone tells Angela, don't put anything in writing. Don't write a fucking email, like call. Because basically they don't want anything down. Paper trail. And so when she goes in, she stumps Natalie, because originally Natalie promises they can call the FBI and there'll be another person from the company there when they listen to it, and the person from the FBI, the agent from the FBI, will be there when they listen to it, and all this stuff. Then when Angela actually gets into the office, which is an entire sequence in and of itself, Natalie tries to renege on that promise. But Angela is insistent. Yeah. This is what you said. This is what you said, you know.
And it absolutely mirrors the scene where she calls the contractor guy above her apartment.
Right.
And he says to her, don't do that. Don't keep saying the same thing to me over and over and before I cave in or something. Right. And then she goes through the exact schedule that they agreed to twice.
Word for word.
And then he gives in. Like it was her working knowledge of these verbal contracts that were made is important part of the story, I think.
You know something too, the fact that you pointed out the puzzle piece and what it could mean now makes me like the movie a bit more.
That's funny. I think it does to me too, because it just adds a more realistic layer to me of why she is having trouble dealing with what we find out is a vicious assault on her.
Right.
But also just being shut in. But I kind of also think it made it a little more realistic to me because they didn't make it a big plot point also.
Yeah, right. I'm struggling about how to go through this because the movie is, like I said, a real clockwork script. Like, it's not really, this isn't Petulia here. We're not having flash forwards and all kinds of stuff. Like it's a pretty much by the number script. Like, think of something Hitchcock might have done.
Yeah.
You know, not even like Rear Window, because really in rewatching Rear Window to prepare for this, I was struck by how Rear Window in a lot of ways was kind of outside some of the stuff Hitchcock had done. It was very contained, and this movie is contained for what, probably the first half maybe, and then once Angela goes out to the corporate hub to take the recordings, and then it becomes pretty much like a techno chase thriller like Enemy of the State or something like that.
Yeah.
Before they end up back in her apartment. The hitmen have followed her there. The fixer is there. Kevin has tried to save her and he's there. Then we get a little bit of the wait until dark type thing going on where she knows her house better than anybody else. And then there's the rest of the ending that I want to talk about in a little bit.
Yeah.
But that part of it, the wait until dark part of it, when she gets back home and she's in there with these hitmen and starts doing all these things using Kimi, like saying, Kimi, bedtime lights, Kimi, play Sabotage, maximum volume, and confuses these guys to the point where she can climb up through this hole in the roof of her pantry or whatever and get to the contractor's nail gun and then pretty much kill these 3 hitmen. I mean, the idea that she's autistic and has this sense of process, going on inside of her head, and has this sense of commitment inside of her head, makes that scene feel so much more believable than it would have been otherwise.
It's really visually similar. There are a lot of aspects of her character that, as I was watching it, were reminding me of The Accountant one with Ben Affleck.
Right.
And he has specific scenes where he's like, they don't let him finish a project and it just spins him out. And so, but everything else, like the violence in that movie is very just matter of fact.
Yeah.
And that's what that kind of felt like to me. So
yeah, right.
My worry is that talking about autism is reducing it down to what the stereotypes are.
Right.
Which is not the intention at all. But
sure.
Her lack of comfort with emotion and deviation from set plans is a character defining aspect of it.
Absolutely well, and that really brings me to when she first goes out of her apartment, because early in the film she has this kind of texting relationship with Terry, the DA, who lives across the street, and as we said, they're kind of a hookup type thing. But it's on her terms. He comes to her apartment, and even at one point he asks her basically if she wants to go out on this date. And he understands that she needs to be in places where there isn't that much stimuli and all that kind of thing. And so he tries to say all this stuff. And then she says, why do you do that?
Even then, he messed up getting there because he didn't buzz the front door. Someone was coming in, let him in. And she almost doesn't let him in because he skipped a step.
Right. Exactly. She seems incredibly suspicious of him.
Yeah.
But then once you plug in the autism aspect of her character, it makes more sense.
Yeah, it's just patterns.
Yeah, on top of the assault that she references later on. Those things mixed together, you're kind of like, oh, okay, I understand this character more. And I also... basically, what that does for me is it expands her boundaries more as a character.
Yeah.
But early in the film, really early in the film, she texts this Terry guy in the morning and says, what if I meet you for one of those egg things down at the truck? And it's this taco truck that's on the curb in front of his building, between their 2 buildings.
Yeah.
And he says, what if you did? And she said, I'll be there in 12. And so then we see her taking a shower in which she is really scrubbing, and you can tell she's kind of counting as she scrubs, that kind of thing. And she's getting ready and everything. And then she gets to the front door and completely kind of crumples to the floor. She just can't go out to do that. And, I'm not on the spectrum, at least that I know of.
Yeah.
But I understand that part of it because I'm not a complete agoraphobic, but because of my condition, even before the pandemic, I wouldn't go out very often. I would go to the library and I would maybe go to the grocery store. Although after having groceries delivered for a while, we're never fucking doing that again. But I know when I was watching her get ready, I knew right away she's not going through with this.
Yeah.
I understood
totally.
like how she was getting ready, the franticness of gathering everything, deciding which medications to take. And people are like, well, wait, fuck, you're going across the street. And it's like, no, you don't understand.
Yeah.
Like, what if I need this particular medication and I have to get in an elevator or I have to go upstairs?
Yeah.
I can't necessarily do that. What if I can't make it? Blah, 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 blah. I mean, there are all these things that run through your head, even if you're, you know, for me, the only thing I go out for now is I go out for a walk around our neighborhood when I can. And even that, I'm kind of like, okay, I need this, I need this, I need this. Yeah. It's one of those things that I understood. And the way I understood it so viscerally was because of the way he shot it. You know, like the way he shot it was exactly the mindset. And then later on, when she actually does get it together and venture out to go to the corporate tech hub to talk to Natalie, that basically is pretty much every trip out for me to a place I don't know. I mean, I just, you know, I mean, she hugs the wall, which I never really do, but the idea of like any distraction, anything that's out of place, that's an obstacle when you feel that way. It's not, you know, you don't stop and smell the roses. You think, oh, is there a way for me to get quickly around that rose bed to get to wherever I need to go? Right.
Because you're also now suddenly in a like sea of unpredictability.
Yes.
So
right. Exactly. Exactly.
And that doesn't work with her specifically. But I'm the same way. The lockdown kind of like, I didn't really go out like a whole lot anyway.
Right.
But then it's like, well, you just kind of get used to it. But yeah, like I went to a family reunion a few months ago, and that was like the first time where it was just rooms full of people. Our family is very big. And so it was like just the smallest room had like 8 people in it.
Oh God.
And so it was a thing for me that I was leaning really hard into the isolation part. And then
yeah. Well, I'll tell you, I think this movie did something to me because last night, this morning, I had a dream that I was at our old apartment.
Yeah.
And somebody was going to have to take Lila to work. And it was Ryan and his family. They were going to take her to work.
Huh.
And it was daytime when we went out. And I was just like, I don't know. Do you guys have your masks and everything? And yada, yada, yada. So then I go back into the duplex and it's night. And I feel something coming from the alley door because we had a little side door between the houses. And so I went down and I looked outside and there was a woman standing out there, a short woman, and she wanted to read the meter. And so we had this whole negotiation. And before I knew what was happening, like she was in the house and I said, we haven't had anybody here inside in 2 years or whatever COVID's been going on. Like, what?
Yeah.
Why? Get the fuck out of here. And then before I knew it, for some reason, her parents, the meter reader's parents were also there and they also insisted on coming in. So I kicked her dad's ass. I mean, I have to say, I did actually, I protected the bad shoulder and I kicked him out of the house. But I think part of that was Kimi. I guess in a sense, it's almost like the filmmakers were saying, look, we understand.
Yeah.
What people go through when they're having these kinds of feelings until the very ending. And then I was kind of like, I feel like the very ending felt like they didn't understand.
I think that while this movie isn't a strikingly original piece of cinema, it's a good movie.
Right.
And it's good because of the characterization of her that you're given right up front. How Soderbergh does that is great.
Yeah.
The same thing, that guy that she calls, no one who's had to work from home is going to not understand what this guy's going through while he's trying to talk to her and his daughters are in the background screaming and playing a video game and he just is over it.
You're right.
You can tell he's over all of it. He's over this is his life. And even just that little scene, you're like, that guy is relatable to how many people watching this?
Right.
And So this is one of those things that Soderbergh is always going to do well, is characterization stuff.
Yeah.
Or I think that he has done really well in the past with. Well, what I was going to say we could jump into is that right off, we are shown how sound is going to work in this movie.
Yes.
The second she put on those headphones and everything cut out, I was like, oh, I really like that.
Yeah.
And then later she has earbuds in, and that when she puts them in, the right channel goes quiet and the left channel goes quiet. Like, it was just, his use of sound was great. Because this is one question that I have for you.
Mm-hmm.
So these people are working on her apartment upstairs, and that sound was terrible.
Right. Yeah.
When she goes outside and all of the sound is amped up so much, did that make you suspicious at all about the fact that what was in her apartment probably wasn't as loud to us? Is that just how loud it is to her?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I see where you're coming from, because in the end, when she ends up climbing up through that hole in her ceiling, I mean, there's enough room of a space for her to crawl between the floors before she goes up and gets the nail gun. So I don't know. Yeah, that's a good point, because she does seem more sensitive to sound. That was one of the things that actually reminded me a lot of the conversation, was the fact that sound was so integral to the film, and the fact that, you know, she had to like bring out this old EQ, like this older tech to really uncover the sounds of the assault. So yeah, I mean, it's a good point.
Just made me curious, because like when she went outside, you are well aware that the noise and all of that dissonance and other stuff, that this is in her head.
Right.
Like, this is not actual city sound as much as it's mixed with how overwhelming it is. And I just was watching that going, I no longer trust the sound in her apartment.
Yeah.
I think. And I liked that.
Yeah.
A little bit of like an unreliable narrator aspect.
Right.
Kind of there, where you're like, ooh, I was maybe being lied to up front. I didn't know it. And so I kind of liked that, but I really liked how sound wise, it was a lot like in Kafka, once he enters the castle.
Right.
And it goes color.
Right.
Like when she left, everything changed.
Yes.
Except it was more sound based, but then also camera went super handheld, shaky.
Yeah. I don't think this is probably conscious, because I don't think it's hardly ever conscious, right? Like, I don't think a filmmaker says, okay, I'm going to do a variation on this thing that I did in such and such.
Yeah.
But I do think that when she went out to go to the corporate tech hub, it felt almost like Fletcher Munson's commute to work in Schizopolis. Like a slowed down version of that, and actually a more serious version.
Yeah.
And a more realistic version of her experience.
Exactly.
And so, I mean, I think that's the case. I think the other thing that's kind of interesting too, that informs that idea in the movie of her being an unreliable narrator, is actually a line that happens between Brad, the CEO guy of Amygdala, and then Rivas, the corporate fixer. They're on that bridge, and Brad's giving Rivas like another payment to hire this guy Yuri to track down Angela when she's out on the streets of Seattle. And Bradley says, everything's just moving so fast. It just moves so much faster now. And Rivas says, I know, right? It kind of bums me out. And I kind of felt like that idea kind of permeated the entire film. And admittedly, I mean, I am working my way through this book right now, because it's really hard for me to read books nowadays. Just because of my brain. But I'm trying to read this book called Stolen Focus, which is about the ways in which social media and the internet have shrunk our attention spans. And it's actual data about how it shrunk our attention spans and what we can do about it. And it could be a case of like, okay, now I have a hammer, so everything is a nail, right? But it does feel like there is something of that idea permeating the film. And, you know, Soderbergh's one of those guys where he's like, seems like a very data-driven type person. Like if you look at his end-of-year reading list, you'll see sociological books. You'll also see, of course, fiction. And so I wonder if Soderbergh's saying that kind of thing. But at the same time, like this movie felt both in touch and out of touch with what's going on in the world.
I can totally see that.
Because, like bringing up the idea multiple times of Angela's Instagram account not being who she really is. And I'm like, yeah, okay, great. It's 2010. Like, I mean, everybody knows that. That's a foregone conclusion.
No, she just offhandedly says, like, that's what everybody, he's like, why would you make a fake life? And she's like, everybody does.
Right,
like,
right. I know they make a point of it a couple of times. And so I'm kind of like, well, is that supposed to be something meaningful or profound that this movie is saying? Because it's neither really. Like, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, we do that. So basically, when we look at anybody's profile, we take about 80% off of it. And that's probably who they really are,
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I mean, it's kind of weird. This movie, in some ways, it's right on the money. And in other ways, it feels like two 50, 60-year-old guys making a movie about younger people for 55, 60-year-old people.
Actually, that description rings very true to me. I can definitely see that.
I expected more insight than I got. And I don't think that that's entirely Soderbergh's fault, and it's not entirely David Koepp's fault, the screenwriter, because, look, Koepp writes clockwork screenplays. He does.
He does. And in this screenplay, he wrote an ending that he's already written, because the whole end of this movie is Panic Room. And he wrote that.
That's
already.
Right. That's right. I knew that ending from somewhere. Damn it.
I was watching it just going, she's going to sneak off. It's not a panic room in this case.
Right.
But the same thing. Like 3 antagonists trapped in her house. She's in the panic room and she runs everything and ultimately wins. And
at first I'm kind of thinking, okay, like I brought up Wait Until Dark.
Which, definitely.
Is that Audrey Hepburn movie with Alan Arkin, I think.
Yeah.
But it still didn't feel like quite enough. Panic Room, that's a great pull. Fuck, that's right.
But it sort of backs up. I think what we're both saying and have said is that, like, this is definitely a movie worth watching. There's some good technical tricks in it. The sound design, the shots, some of this stuff is great. As a movie on its whole, I'm kind of like, it was good.
Yeah.
But I just got to watch it last night. But I was like, maybe I'll watch it again this morning. And then I was like, I think I got it.
Yeah.
Because it just, in talking about this movie, it was going to be impossible not to bring up all the other things that it's like.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
It's not unique.
What it felt like to me was a really well taken care of vintage Mercedes, right? Like this car has been well taken care of. It's going to run well. These days, it's not a spectacular car, but it's just, it's neat.
Yeah. And you know what you're getting when you just see the name Mercedes. You're like, oh, okay, here's what I expect.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And I feel like of the 3 recent movies that Soderbergh has made, like this one, No Sudden Move. Yeah. And Let Them All Talk, one with Meryl Streep and Diane Wiest. And I guess, this is pre-pandemic, but The Laundromat too. Yeah. I thought The Laundromat was the most imaginative of the 4, but the one that I find myself actually wanting to see more and more, the 2, Let Them All Talk and No Sudden Move. Like I just watched No Sudden Move again the other day for the 3rd or 4th time. And I was like, yeah, I like this movie. I like this take on this genre. I like the ideas that are expressed in, they're on the nose.
Yeah.
But I also like the idea of couching it that way. Here with this movie, I thought Zoe Kravitz was incredible. Like she is fantastic.
That's it, yes.
She carried the movie. And she made this movie so much better than it would have been otherwise. And I don't ever want to speak for a filmmaker, obviously, or a screenwriter, but I would venture to say that Soderbergh and Koepp would probably agree with that. I mean, you know, objectively, she was fantastic. Everybody actually in the movie was excellent. I mean, the cast was excellent. But it brings up two things. First, I want to make sure that we talk about Rita Wilson. And then I want to wind things down, unless you have other things to talk about, and talk about the very, very end of this movie. Because that's a big problem. But Rita Wilson, like, where did she find that Kamala Harris energy?
It was because, in your notes, that's what you said in it. Like, she was a living embodiment of the HR manual. Like, and is that what you said? There was something, it was better than that. You said something better than that.
I mean, I tend to write stuff down so that I sound smarter than I am. Okay, so here's what I wrote. Rita Wilson is Natalie Chowdhury, an inspired choice for casting. As an actor, she's a trustworthy, stable presence, which she is. Here she has some real Kamala Harris energy, saying some of the right things, but not in a way that is necessarily believable. It's like she found a way to read the HR manual more naturally and gracefully, like a bedtime story. And I
stand by that as well. I totally think that her casting, I mean, it's another one of those things where I see her come on screen and I'm like, wow, when is the last time I saw her do stuff? Like,
but then you look her up and she's fucking everywhere.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's so weird.
But she's one of those people who is instantly comforting.
Yes.
Like when they show up. And I thought that she was like great casting. And it is funny because just the casting overall in this is it's a lot of people that I do not know.
Yeah. There's no real stunt casting. I would even call Rita Wilson stunt casting.
Yeah.
That casting was inspired, and she was just a beautiful performance. I mean, you know that person. You know that person somehow exists in the world, but it's like you can't imagine that person taking a shit, you know? You think that they just go into a garage and plug themselves into an outlet or something. Like
a hybrid.
Yeah. I mean, she's brilliant at it though, because even though you see the trailer and kind of know how things are going to turn.
Yeah.
When she showed up on screen, I thought, oh, okay, here we go. This is Angela's shot to really get something. But the thing that got me, obviously the conversation between the two, when, you know, Natalie tried to basically go back on pretty much every promise she made to Angela over the phone. Then Natalie goes out and tells her secretary, I have to go get Mr. Cole or Mr. Call on the line, which I hope to God that it's Call.
Me too.
Because because like I said, like I think I put this in the notes, this is the karmic sequel to the conversation in a lot of ways. And
well, technically, what's the unofficial sequel?
Enemy of the State.
Enemy of the State.
Right.
This did remind me of specifically. So it was funny, like after you had said conversation, I was like, oh yeah. And then I could see a lot of the same vibes when she's on the street just trying to get home and how she's getting tracked and stuff. But that I don't know why they couldn't use his name in that, but he was wearing the same raincoat.
Yeah.
So
that
was funny.
Well, and you know, I mean, speaking of movies, this feels like too, just while I'm thinking about it, the chase through the tech hub, that felt like the Parallax View, the Pakula movie.
That's funny.
I mean, this one was more fraught with danger because we knew what the objective was. And the way that Kravitz runs in these scenes, she runs like a real scared person, like not like an action star.
Totally.
She only really runs like an action star for a second in the end of the film when she's in her apartment in her own element. So I kind of like that little touch of like, okay, she's more comfortable here. This is where she works out. This is where she exercises. This is where she knows where everything is. And I liked that in the end she used Kimi against the hitman. I thought that was a great touch.
Yeah, totally.
But
totally.
I do want to maybe segue now, if it's okay, into the very end.
Well, one thing right before we do that, the only thing that I did kind of want to talk about is like these hitmen were out of control.
Yeah.
Like how they thought attempting to kidnap her in front of a bunch of like activists.
Yeah, well, let's set that up really fast, because this is another kind of I hate to keep going back to this because I sound like I know about theater really, but back to the Chekhov's gun thing. Like they planted the idea of these protests about the city wanting to jail homeless people.
Yeah.
And they planted that in a news report at the beginning of the movie. And then later on, when she's trying to get to the FBI field office because she's been chased through the tech hub by these hitmen, she makes it out and she finds the FBI field office in town on her phone. She tries to turn her phone off and then they turn it back on. And so she realizes that they're still tracking her and she decides to throw her phone away. When she stops at the trash can, she's in front of pretty much City Hall, I guess. And this protest is going on. And they decide to try to nab her in a black van at this protest.
Like within arm's length of a crowd of people.
Yeah, there are like people around the trash can protesting that she's standing at. I mean, it's so close. And so the protesters stop that kidnapping and end up getting her out of the back of the van. Yeah. Now, I did like little echoes like that.
Yeah.
You had reports of that happening to people during the Black Lives Matter protests, you know, like being picked up by unmarked vans. So I did kind of like the echoes of recent events that were in the movie, but weren't like ripped from the headline type stuff.
That's funny because that's like, now that you say that, I'm like, oh yeah. And I mean, I'm just outside Portland. Like,
right.
That was happening here. Like the news was crazy every night. Like it was
right.
But no, that's funny. I didn't actually make that specific connection. I was just like, what do they think this is going to do? Like, how did they expect to even get the door shut?
Right.
And when they're going after her in that corporate office, what were they going to do when they caught up to her? Like, they were going to full on murder her in that hallway?
Well, and that was the thing, too, is that like they started walking towards Natalie's office. Natalie's office was a completely glass office inside of like a bunch of banks of cubicles.
Yeah.
And it seemed like they hadn't cleared out the entire area necessarily. I mean, well, I guess her secretary was gone because Angela went out and Sharon, Natalie's secretary, was gone.
Yeah.
But I don't know if they cleaned out the rest of the area because it didn't feel like they had. It still felt like there were people milling about.
Totally.
And one of these hitmen, that guy's got to be like, what, 6'8", maybe?
I know. They stand out as an odd couple.
Yeah. Yeah. Because like, the one guy is like, I don't know, he's probably 6'8". And then the other guy looks like he might be like shorter than 6 foot. He looks like he might be like 5'7", 5'8", maybe.
Yeah, no, totally.
But, and so they're an odd couple. The shorter guy has glasses. The taller guy has long hair, you know. I think there's a racial difference between the two. I can't remember. I think the tall guy is white and the short guy is like Latino.
Is like Latinx. Yeah. Like, and they're credited as like tall thug and glasses thug.
Yeah. Like they didn't even get fucking names. Poor guys. No. But the thing that's funny, though, is that, I don't know what they thought they were going to do in the office. I don't know what they thought they were going to do if they caught her in the hallway. I don't know what they thought they were going to do if they pulled up in front of a protest and tried to nab her. Like, I don't know. And the other thing about them that really kind of bothered me, too, was that when Angela is hearing the attacks on Samantha from the Kimi recordings, she's doing kind of like these reenactments in her head where she sees Erica Christensen. But the thing that sucks is that she also sees the hitmen and they're exactly what they look like when she sees them in real life.
Yeah, and that was problematic to me as well.
To me, I'm kind of like, okay, well, in that sense, this does feel like Petulia in a way because Petulia is this movie from the late 60s and there are like all these flash forwards and things in it. It's really great. I think it might be like a Richard Lester movie or somebody like that. But
that's one that I have not even heard of. That's
funny. But that's something that bothered me. Like, I kind of wanted a blur in there or something because it's kind of shot through a fractured lens, those little reenactments or whatever. And they're shot close and in weird kind of like spotlight, phone light type, lighting.
Yeah.
So I kind of wanted something else there because that's never really explained necessarily.
Yeah.
But I mean, honestly, if they're taken down by one guy who's overweight and stabbed in the gut and, a very tiny woman with a nail gun, all three of these guys are taken out. There's no reason Amygdala should be going public the following week because the people they had working for them were complete idiots.
No, totally. Yes. The way that they were taken out so easily. I think that saying that discounts how much of like a badass scene it is for Angela's character. And it totally fits because like you said, she's in her house now. Like this is her world.
Right.
And she's a different person in there. And
I did get the charge when she said Kimi and Kimi said, I'm here. I was like, oh, fuck, it is on. I didn't fucking it didn't occur to me. And then she said that and fuck, I just got a chill just talking about it. Like, I was like,
that's funny.
God damn, kick their asses. Sure. It's maybe not realistic that she, used duct tape on a nail gun and killed 3 professional hitmen. But same time, like in a way, who gives a shit? It really, really works.
Exactly. The one guy who got one in the head as he peeked up, that was gonna work.
Yeah.
No matter what.
Right.
But I'm going to suspend disbelief just because it's her element and it's just cool to see her.
Yeah.
Like warming up to be Catwoman.
Right.
In that role.
Right.
So.
Right.
Which I'm really looking forward to.
I forgot about that. She's going to be Catwoman. Wow.
Yeah. So I'm all for that.
Yeah. She's fantastic. She's really great.
Okay. So that was all that I had really before
the very
before
end.
The ending. Yeah. The very, very end.
What happens with that? Let's talk about that really fast, kind of set things up. So the hitmen end up doing this thing where she gets away from them at the protest, and then she almost gets to the FBI field office, but she sees another black van out in front of the field office. And so she's being really careful, and she walks across this courtyard. She sees this guy that kind of looks like Brad, the CEO, coming towards her, but it ends up he's meeting somebody else.
Which you saw from a mile away, that scene. Like, you know exactly what's going to happen.
Right. You know that's the jump scare in the scene, and that's the MacGuffin, and then you got to move on to the real thing. But this very kind of, I don't know, average looking, just like a secretarial type woman comes towards Angela, and she's just like, oh, we were wondering when you were going to join us. And Angela's kind of looking at her like, what? And then somebody brushes past Angela and hits her with his umbrella.
Yeah, which is the old school spy stuff, which I was like, that's pretty cool. And
yeah, it's pretty cool. And then she starts to collapse, and then the short thug comes up and grabs onto her, and she starts to say something, and then the woman who came up to her, this blonde woman, starts saying, shut up. Yeah. And they walk away. They like kind of half carry her away. Now, before we go on, if they had that technology, why didn't they do that in the first place?
Exactly. And why are they so good in that scene?
Right.
And then passable in every other scene.
Exactly.
Now, I get that it's realistic, that they're not the best of the best at everything. Like, I get that that's real. That's the reality of, I don't know, hiring contract killers.
I guess, but we never really see who the guy with the umbrella is, because it's not the tall guy. You can kind of pull him out of a crowd, but it could have been Revis, I guess, but I don't know, because we just never see the person. It looked like it could have been tall enough to be Revis. And in a way, I think there's a thematic thing in there, but I might be putting too much on it. I mean, a lot of this feels like, well, we can talk about the end, because I think a lot of this feels kind of like the nature of tech and how it relates to our lives beyond the whole stolen focus thing I was talking about.
Yeah.
I feel like there are times when this movie is saying, yes, look, sometimes this company and their product and their people are extremely efficient and effective, but most of the time they're not.
Yeah.
But it makes for a very confusing, visceral experience of a film in some ways. But anyway, she's poisoned. They put her in the back of the van, the two hitmen do, and they drive her basically back to her apartment. And pretty much here what we get is kind of like shots of her face over shots of what she's seeing through the van window go by, like the buildings and stuff. And it's all blurry and everything's kind of cross-dissolved, and you can hear the hitmen talking about what they're going to do with her, and like if they ever wonder, like one of them asks the other, do you ever wonder like what these people do or what they did or whatever? And he's like, no, and so it's that whole thing. It felt very much, again, like Soderbergh's movie, The Underneath, like when, what's his name? Peter Gallagher wakes up from his coma or whatever, and all the people that question him, it felt a lot like that.
That's funny,
If you can't steal from yourself, who can you steal from?
Yeah.
But, so then they get her home, and as they're walking her in, it's clear that she is not with it. Like she's only half awake, if that. And this Kevin guy from across the street who's been watching her from his window, sometimes with binoculars.
Yeah, super creepily watching her.
Yeah, exactly. He comes up and says, hey, girl, what's going on? Looks like you've had a little too much to drink and stuff like that. And then he gets in too close and one of the hitmen stabs him in the gut, like right in the side. And he tells her to run. And so she runs into her apartment, but once she gets in there, Revis is in there.
Yeah.
The fixer. And so the hitmen bring Kevin, who is the weird neighbor, they bring him up. And they're both in there. And then this whole thing pops off where she ends up killing them all with a nail gun.
Yeah.
And so she puts her coat on Kevin's wound and says, can you hold this tight and everything? And he says yes, which is interesting because she said the exact same thing in the exact same syntax to him near the beginning of the scene, which I thought was really a nice touch.
Exactly.
And then throughout this action sequence, basically, we get little cutaways every once in a while of Terry, the DA, wanting to come over from across the street to say he's sorry because he blew Angela off earlier in the day when she needed him.
Yeah.
And Terry finally shows up with flowers and knocks on the door as she's calling 911 with Kimi. Kimi, call 911. And she's telling them, what's going on as she opens the door for Terry and looks at him and was like, hey, what's up?
Yeah, yeah.
I think the movie should have ended there.
I absolutely agree.
But then what happens is, it's like, we dissolve to her apartment and the camera kind of tracks around her apartment. And then we go outside and we see her in this like floral print mini dress thing with high heels. And she's got pink hair now instead of blue. She walks across the street and she's just like almost a totally different person.
She absolutely looks like a different person.
Totally different person. She kisses Terry. And this is while that Alaska song is playing. And
when that kicked in, I was like, wait, what?
Yeah. I don't understand that very tippy tip of the ending. I don't get it.
I think it's bad.
Yeah, right.
It's irresponsible to be even more specific because as someone being bipolar, there's a lot of pervasive, just get past it.
Right.
Just don't be
right.
And so one way to read that ending is that her feeling empowered by protecting herself and obvious empowerment after whatever the vicious attack on her was, that now she's just better.
Yeah.
She just got better, and that's irresponsible.
Yeah, and the thing, Aaron, is that it felt so irresponsible that I was like, it made me question whether she actually made it out of the van at all.
Absolutely. I mean, is this a Jacob's Ladder thing?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Is this a fucking M. Night Shyamalan, O. Henry update where it's like, oh, by the way, But, I mean, watching the movie a second time, I'm like, no, there's no real indication of that.
No, totally.
You know, and I understand where you're coming from too, because I got a lot of that, especially early on in my illness. They were like, well, you know,
definitely.
Lyme disease, man, like you get, 30 days of antibiotics and you're fine. And I just heard them joking about that on New Girl, how can it be like a problem? And it's kind of like, no, you don't understand what it is. It's like, this is minute to minute.
And everybody seems to know somebody who has it who's like, well, but they're fine.
Yeah, exactly. And
you're like, that's not
right.
how it works, man.
Those are the same people that think every type of cancer is actually the same. And like every type of cancer is actually a different illness. It just behaves somewhat the same. So they kind of lump it all together.
Right.
So,
it's the same because it's in your body.
Right.
And that's
right. Exactly. And and it manifests as a tumor, but all of those tumors behave differently. They all do different things.
No, absolutely. So that was my feeling as it ended. I was like, because I also had the same. I'm like, did she die? And or is she like still in the van? Like, and they're gonna leave that open-ended.
Right.
But that was a very specific ending.
Incredibly specific. And really, honestly, I feel like with Angela, I was trying to put myself in her place, which is what you're supposed to do with the main character of a fucking movie, right? Like you're supposed to put yourself there. And in putting myself in her place, I would be like, you know what? After killing 3 hitmen in my own house and like meeting this guy and stuff, to me, that would reinforce the idea that going out is a bad idea.
Yeah.
Because I went out and what did I bring back with me? 3 hitmen, an injured neighbor. I had to climb through the fucking ceiling to get a nail gun. Like, that's going to reinforce everything. That's not going to make me want to dress up and go out to the taco truck.
And it is now your second vicious assault in a short span of time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I wish it had ended at the door because I think
absolutely
if you see him there with the flowers, he gives her the flowers and she's just like, hey, what's up? Boom. Directed by Steven Soderbergh. You could even have the kid, because at the very end, like there's a freeze frame on her and then you hear Kimi say, I'm here.
I still don't understand why that's there, because they just made a point of showing that Kimi is not in her house anymore. Where Kimi sat, there is a vase of flowers on that table.
Right.
Now.
That's a great point. And I think this goes back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier, where it's kind of like, this is pervasive. So one person gets rid of it and their life is better. But it's kind of like, they make her life so dramatically better that then it undercuts even that point.
It absolutely does. And it just is irresponsible to be like, look, she's fixed now.
Right.
It's also one thing just for the autism community. A lot of people don't love that this puzzle piece is the symbol because it's meant to symbolize like there is a puzzle and this one piece, it's the missing piece. You have a missing piece and people are like, cool. So I'm not empowered at all. Thanks. That's awesome.
And it's like that there's just one piece and it's always the same shape.
Yeah. And so stylistically, it just looked like the end of like Laverne and Shirley or something. Like everything you've seen already. But the whole time, I'm exactly the same as you. That movie should have ended at the door.
Yeah.
And the rest of it is like irresponsible.
Yeah. I think this is going to be one of those situations kind of like LA Confidential. With LA Confidential, I always turn it off when Guy Pearce shoots Cromwell.
Yeah.
Because I'm just like, I don't want the ending. Like Russell Crowe didn't live. Right? Like, I don't give a shit if he lived in the book. Like people are like, well, he lived in the novel. I don't care. In this movie, that's what happened, No,
I'm the same. I read that book. I love that movie, but I feel the same way. I think that it's just him living in the goodbye scene is just like, I don't need that. I don't need that.
And that's like a story about a fucking detective, right? Like this is a story that doing that with this character actually means something. Like, and it means something that's not good. And the thing is that it's not beneficial on pretty much any level unless there is some little thing in this movie that both of us totally missed that we'll get on our fourth watch and go, oh, that's why this happens.
But what could we have missed that would make that ending
right
be good,
right,
or even just okay?
Yeah, short of this being like fucking Donnie Brasco, where she's been undercover as an autistic assault survivor for years, only to bring down this huge corporation like it just doesn't make any sense. Like, that's stupid. And it's irresponsible on a human level, and it's just it doesn't make sense from a creative standpoint, really.
And that's the thing. I could look past it. I would still be like you. That should have ended at the door. But I could kind of look past it. But it's the irresponsible aspect of it that's impossible for me not to see and react to on a personal level that I know is different than a lot of people. I guarantee we're like, oh, I like that it ended happy, and good for them. Like,
Or,
but
fuck them. Like, be imaginative enough to make up your own happy ending from the door.
At the door. It's a happy ending.
Yeah.
She's alive. That guy on the couch is arguably still alive. We don't know.
Well, and he's not even included in the little coda. Like, he's nowhere to be found. So
that's true.
She's not, Terry and Angela are not inviting Kevin down to the taco truck. So who knows if he survived, and who gives a shit, because now she has a new dress and high heels. And
exactly. He might as well have been there. They all high five each other.
Yeah.
Like, what is happening?
Yeah.
It is not.
I mean, all told, though, when you look at the movie overall, in a way, it kind of feels like every center-left political idea kind of put into a movie. Tech is good, but it's also bad. And also, like, if anything bad's going on, it obviously involves, like, Russian hackers.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it's kind of felt like an MSNBC show at times.
Yeah, I can see that.
Look, like, I admit, I'm to the left of the political spectrum. But
me too.
Fucking hell. Like, the thing that kind of got me in the end was that she ended up trusting the FBI more than the corporation. And I'm just kind of like, well, is this guy really going to be convicted of a murder?
I know, that's a good point.
With 3 dead hitmen in his apartment, sound files that she has on a flash drive, but have otherwise been deleted off of everything else. The other thing that doesn't make any sense about the end, I'm sorry, I'm going to keep finding things now. It's like she ends up admitting that the sound files are on the laptop. So Rivas and one of the other hitmen go over to get it off her laptop, and she says, you'll need the password. And Rivas says, oh, we have that already, thanks. And I'm like, then why didn't you fucking check the laptop? Before asking her and slapping her in the face, why didn't you check the fucking laptop to see if the files were on there? Like, what the fuck is going on?
One laptop. Her job is to sit on that laptop.
Yeah.
Where do you think she downloaded the files?
Yeah. She downloaded them directly from her fucking Kimi. Like, Jesus Christ. Like, I think she might have a PC on that desk too, but I'm like, still, there are 2 machines with keyboards in this room. And if you have the password to the laptop, why aren't you doing that while you're waiting for the hitman to drop off a drugged person? You're sitting alone. I just don't get it. Sorry, fuck. This is starting to fall apart again for me.
No, and it's funny because when you talk about everything that's set up, for all the things that are in there that land later, what was the tooth thing really about, except to show like another example of her not being able to go out and how much that would suck for everyone watching.
Right.
But I'm guessing her tooth is fixed now. But
well, I mean, it was one of those things where, it was kind of like she wouldn't even go out for that.
Yeah.
And they had set up the fact that she would have gone out for her therapist appointment because the therapist called her and said, you're late. Why aren't you here or something? So I think the gist I got from that was that Angela would go out to the therapist appointment. But
Yeah.
with the dentist, I don't know. I mean, like, I felt it personally because I've had
Yeah.
problems with that over the past couple of years. Like my doctor canceling meds because I can't go into the office to see her, even though they're not narcotics or anything.
Yeah.
And with the dentist, I understand where he's coming from. With some doctors, I'm kind of like, do you just want the big money because my insurance doesn't pay for visits to you? You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
So, I don't know. The movie's 89 minutes. So I think if they had cut that out, it would have gotten down to about closer to 88 minutes, which in my opinion is the perfect length for a feature film.
That's funny. That does make sense.
Yeah.
It's weird. I mean, I get it's another thing in it where you're like, as a viewer, you're like, this is relatable now more than ever.
Right.
This scenario. But then why keep showing her with her tooth hurting?
Right.
And then don't have it fall out when the guy punches her in the face or something. So that, then you're like, oh, well, now she doesn't have to worry about that tooth, I guess.
Well, and the other thing about it, I think, is part of it is to show that she's still not coping with everything that's happened to her in her life, even though it seems like she is on a certain level. But I'm also kind of like, okay, well, then if that's the point of that subplot, if you can even call it that, shading of it, then what about the ending?
Yeah.
Now magically she can just deal with everything, and like you said, she's cured. Maybe, I don't know.
Guessing she went to the dentist.
Yeah, she doesn't. She doesn't grind at night. That's cool.
Yeah, no, because she's fixed now.
Yeah,
like it's
so weird.
Irresponsible is like the only word that I can really come up with for a character that you treated well throughout the movie.
Yes, and
it's like they abandoned her.
Right. In the end, like they completely abandoned who she was.
Yeah.
And and I'll say, like, I'll watch this movie again. Fuck, I might even watch it again this weekend just because I'm an unabashed Steven Soderbergh fan. And I always find something useful in the movies that he makes, even the ones I don't dig. Like, I still go back and watch The Good German, even though I don't really like the movie as much.
Well, what's funny is before you brought up doing this one, I had rewatched Out of Sight and Ocean's 11.
Yeah.
Those are just out of the park wins for me.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of it has to do with how he deals with characterization and stuff and just how his shots look and stuff. And with Kimi, I will watch it again. And I'm going to respond even better to just how he uses sound. In this in particular is really interesting to me.
Right.
And I'm going to pay more attention to how dramatically the world changes once she's out and try and kind of pick that apart a little more.
Yeah.
But it's just, I don't think it's a bad movie, and it doesn't have to be a great movie.
No.
It's getting hammered on IMDb. I did think the one, the one reference, obviously people are making Rear Window things, and I think it does show that a lot of people don't really know Rear Window.
Yeah.
Like, it's easy to say, and it makes them sound like, I know Hitchcock.
Right.
He did The Birds. And you're like, yeah, man. You're right.
That's right.
You're right. The Birds.
Yeah.
So one person just compared the end to the new Home Alone movie. And I'm like, that's kind of good. It's kind of an adult Home Alone.
Yeah, I did see some of that on IMDb, and I did see the one guy who went all in on how incredible Rear Window is, and you should just go watch that instead of this. And I'm like, well, for people who subscribe to HBO Max, like, it's actually cheaper to just watch this movie. So, fuck you.
And why would you go, oh, but we already have Rear Window? Like, I want both things to exist.
Exactly. And the thing, too, is that, like you said, like, you don't know Rear Window that well because this movie really ceases being Rear Window when she stops looking out her fucking window. Like, Kevin, her neighbor, does use binoculars to watch her from time to time.
True.
But that's not a focal point of the movie.
No, totally.
And so, I think the comparisons are pretty shallow. I think people were probably making that comparison based on the trailer, which I can completely understand.
Yeah.
But the second you watch the movie, like you were saying earlier, it's a whole bunch of stuff put together.
It is, and it's just, I like One thing that I do really like about it too is that it's like this concept of this thing is always listening to you.
Yeah. Right.
I think that one thing that Soderbergh always does well when he does it is voyeurism.
Yeah.
In a way. And so you already have this thing that's recording everything you say. And her apartment may as well be all windows.
Yeah.
And everything across the street is all windows.
Right.
And she walks around.
Yeah.
Barely clothed all the time.
Right.
Like, I mean, not 100% of the movie, but it just shows that, like, this is how her character functions. And everybody sees everything. Everybody hears everything. Everything is transparent in this new world.
Right.
But, man, just the choice of where they have her living. It's just wall of windows.
Yeah.
That's
well, in fact, I think her apartment goes all the way through the building. So she has windows on both sides.
Yeah.
Because when she's working out, I think she's in her bedroom, which is at the back of the apartment. So she's just off the bedroom working out, and there are windows there too. So yeah, she's constantly under scrutiny. I mean, I agree with that. I mean, I think here, the way that Kimi was used, I think there probably could have been more opportunities on the table to use that, you know.
Especially since it's called Kimi.
Yeah, right. But the fact that, like, for instance, when she goes to the tech hub, the corporate tech hub to meet Natalie, they scan her retina, and then inside she's just like, how did you get that? And Natalie says, oh, well, you know, we get it off the video calls. It's just faster that way. Yeah, and she says, well, I never agreed to that. And Natalie's like, well, yeah, you did in the terms and conditions.
Well, it's funny because there's just I think it's John Oliver from, like, one of his things talking about the Apple terms and conditions. And he said, like, they could reprint the entirety of Mein Kampf in there. Yeah. And no one would ever know. Right. You would just scroll down and hit accept. Yeah. So I thought that was a good example of, like, she seems tech savvy and all that, and she had no idea they had her eye scan. Like, she thought she was empowered by going, they don't have my eye scan. And you're like, no, they already have it. Like,
yeah, well, and she said, you know, like, when Natalie brought up, she said, well, it's in the terms and conditions. So yeah, you do agree to it. And Angela's like, well, nobody reads those. Yeah, and that was the thing where it's like, yes, that was an in-touch thing because we know that, but the fact that a character states it while also not having done it, while also being younger, I don't know. In a way, it almost felt in touch and out of touch again. I mean, I would be really fascinated to hear Soderbergh talk about this in depth. I don't know that he will, you know, because he doesn't do commentaries really anymore.
Yeah, which is sad.
And after this, you know, discussion, I don't think he's ever coming on this show. But you know, I really like this movie. I mean, like, I really do. I think that there's a lot. I think the first 2/3 of it are fantastic.
Yeah.
I think it just kind of falls apart in the end. And I don't know what you do about that. You know, I mean, I think a start is ending it at the front door, like we were saying. But other than that, I don't know what you do about it. I mean, I'm going to assume that Koepp is the guy who set this up as a Clockwork type movie.
Yeah.
And so if you write a script like that, that's very clockworky, it's got to really fucking land.
Yeah.
Like, it has to, right? Because if it doesn't, then that landing is even worse. Like, if you don't stick the landing, then you get more points deducted because you had a really great fucking routine, but you fell off your mark when you went for the landing. And so I felt like that with this movie. I felt like there were times when I'm kind of like, okay, well, this is extraneous, especially in a movie like this that's set up to be so like a watch.
Yeah.
You know, and then you get to the end and it's like, fucking hell, really? Like, this is where we went. So I don't know.
No, I think there's a lot in it that I really like. I think as I look at it in retrospect, I was much more interested in his use of sound and stuff like that than a lot of the thematic elements that, even though they're done really well, we've seen that movie like a few times. And so, so it wasn't bad, but it was like familiar.
Yeah. And I mean, I get the idea of, like, setting up a character like Angela so that then she has to go out.
Yeah.
And that's her biggest fear and everything. I understand that. But in another sense, I almost wanted to see her take care of this situation from her apartment.
Yeah.
And how, like, if, not necessarily if you lead the trouble back to your cocoon, but what happens when the trouble just comes to you?
Yeah. Totally.
And so I kind of feel like, there's something in that treatment of the story that might have worked that I think Soderbergh definitely could have used. But I also think, if you think about when he was shooting this, I also believe that on some level, she went outside because Soderbergh is one of those people who's been really fairly vocal about getting back out there, shooting films and doing stuff. And the Oscars when he produced the Oscars, they had that, like, you have to show up if you're, within a certain distance and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so I feel like the second half of the movie is kind of like, look, we're back out in the world shooting a movie.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because there were times when things were kind of shot tight, like the protest sequence, like it was a very small protest, which realistically it probably would be with the pandemic and also with that issue, because I don't think as many people care about the homeless as claim to care about the homeless.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. So, some of that I can understand, but the back nine of this movie did feel a little bit like an exercise in like, hey, look at us shooting a movie.
Yeah. And it's satisfying to watch her kill these guys. Like, I was like, this is something that I'm not mad to watch this. Like, it's,
instead of being like the movies that we've covered, this movie should have been more like Home Alone. They should have come to her house and then she set up booby traps all over the place.
Yeah. I saw that comparison. I was like, ooh, I didn't think of that, but that's actually not a bad
It's pretty
call.
apt. I hate Home Alone though, I gotta say.
I do too. Oh, I do too.
I think we just lost like our Cambodian listeners, but I hate Home Alone.
Yeah.
But all right, man. Well, I'd recommend people seeing it.
Me too. Too. Especially if you're a Soderbergh fan. This is another movie of his where I think this movie is definitely better because he directed it.
Yes.
Than in the hands of someone else, like, for sure.
Yeah, totally agree with that. Totally agree. So it's on HBO Max. Go watch it.
Yeah.
So we will, I don't know, we might see you next week, or we'll probably have a double feature later in the month.
With the new format.
Yeah, with the new format. That'll look a lot like this. Obviously, we're going to keep Remake or Rembrandt, but I mean, I don't think Remake or Rembrandt really applies here because the movie came out, a couple days ago. So
let's say it's a Rembrandt, but let's say it's like maybe some of Rembrandt's early work. and it's still him, and it's better than other people on the wall next to him.
Right. Right.
But some of his stuff is way more Rembrandt.
Right.
Than so I don't know.
That's great.
That's my feeling.
So we'll get back with you soon, and here is a sneak peek of a film that's coming up on the Art House Drive-In Picture Show.
Coming soon to this drive-in theater.
This is about a movie about a couple of killers. Harry Callahan. And a homicidal maniac. The one with the badge is Harry.
Halt!
There were a lot of reasons they called him Dirty Harry. And he kept inventing new ones.
Don't pass out any.
Clint Eastwood. Detective Harry Callahan. You don't assign him.
Stop!
To murder cases. You just turn him loose.
Now, what the hell is he doing up there?
thank you for joining us on the Art House Drive-In Picture Show. We hope you enjoyed tonight's episode. Our show is edited and produced by Markham Harvey. Our executive producer is Ryan Mason. Our logo and artwork are created by Rafifi Randolfo. Our announcers are
Lila Pseudonym
and
Lane Hewitt.
Follow us on Twitter or Instagram at Arthouse Drive-In, or head over to our website at arthousedrivein.com, or shoot us an email at arthousedrivein@gmail.com. Please subscribe, rate, and review the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Good Pods, or any other podcatcher of your choice. Most importantly, though, tell your friends. Sneaking your buddies into the Art House Drive-In in the trunk is not only allowed, it's encouraged. Sure, our head ticket guy, Stubbs, won't like it, but we'll vouch for you. We're your friends. We're not like the others. Join us next time for another fantastic episode of the Art House Drive-In Picture Show. We appreciate your patronage. Don't forget to hang up your speaker, and please drive carefully on your way out.